Xenogears is a fascinating game that dares to explore the boundaries of traditional RPG storytelling. At the time of its release, it was controversial in the way it portrayed its religious themes and symbolism, something that is rarely seen in the genre even to this day. Due to its intricate and multifaceted plot, many who have played the game may have failed to grasp the many layers because of its grandiose narrative. In fact, it's easy to come away from the game thinking it to be nothing more than an epic love story when romance is simply the supplement to its spiritual motifs. With that in mind, I'll try my best to keep things as simplistic as I can so as to not overwhelm those who seek to learn more. Right away we get to a pretty strong idea of where the story of Xenogears will take us. The game begins with the phrase, "I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last." This comes from the Book of Revelation of Christianity's Holy Bible, chapter 22, verse 13 in the New Testament. While the precise source of this quote is up for debate in many circles outside of him being a Christian prophet, many scholars believe it to come from John the Apostle. In it, he shares the prophecies he has envisioned, which leads up to the second coming of Jesus. Alpha and Omega represents the belief that God is around from the beginning to the end of time. Shortly after the phrase appears on the screen, we get a view of a giant ship that is soon plunged into chaos after coming into contact with a mysterious force. This ship's engine is powered by an entity known as the Zohar. For those who aren't aware, the Zohar is the name of the manuscript that served as the basis for the Torah, or the Jewish Bible, which was written back in the 13th century. One of the Zohar's major themes is how there is a duality between those who take the Bible literally and those who seek a deeper knowledge through the scriptures for enlightenment, also known as the body versus the soul of the text, respectively. That same line of thinking is used in Xenogears, where Deus represents the body, the literal interpretation, and the existence wave is the soul, or the deeper understanding. Throughout the story, we meet certain characters who offer their own interpretation of what the Zohar represents. For example, how people construe the god founded by the religion of Nissan. With the way it's presented, the Nissan's god is in fact the more spiritual perception of the Zohar. Sophia, the first mother of the Nissan orthodoxy, even states, "Faith in God. Do not look for it on the outside, for it is something one must build from within oneself." After Sophia sacrifices herself for her people, Krillin questions the existence of God over how it would allow such a great deal of bloodshed upon its people. In the midst of his grief and emotional pain, Krillin turns his back on the church and instead seeks out a God that was more clearly described in the Zohar, or the body. This led him to the discovery of Deus, whom he dedicates his life towards. Nanotechnology also plays on the same concept of body versus the soul of the Zohar. During the Zebarim era, Kim and Ellie decide to use the power of nanotechnology in order to create a child, but they also used it to symbolically connect with each other as they used the science to combine their DNA. Those who have played the game are fully aware of how important the relationship between these two characters are throughout the story. Meanwhile, Krillin was using the same technology to further the nefarious goals of Solaris by creating artificial life forms to serve his own purposes. It became clear he no longer held any devotion to the human race, so if we break it down, Kim and Ellie, who soon became Faye and Kelly, seek spiritual collaboration. Another way, human beings need one another to complete the soul. This is shown in the Nissan Sanctuary, where two one-winged angels, one male and one female, are holding hands to signify human togetherness, a personification of the soul. On the other hand, Krillin only cared about his connection to God. This isn't to say Xenogears always serves as a good foundation for attempting to compare an endgame religion to a real-life counterpart, but it doesn't appear that this is what the writers were attempting to convey in the first place. But it's easy to see the prevailing religion represented here is wholly judeo-christian in design. It's not difficult to see why. Many wars have been fought over the literal versus figurative interpretation of the Holy Bible, but the approach is still two sides of the same coin. This particular concept comes into play at the end of the story of the game, where we learn that Ouroboros gene represents the connection between the body and the soul of the Zohar. Ellie serves as the soul of the Zohar, where Mian is the body. In a sense, the Ouroboros gene is the personification of what religion says and what the concealed message actually is. At this point of the game, the two halves of the Mian gene, Mian and Kelly, rejoin, which represented Deus defeating the existence wave, or the body taking over the soul. The moment Deus awakens is their interpretation of the aforementioned second coming of Jesus. Faye, determined to save Ellie from Deus, is given the ability to pilot the Xenogears. It turns out Faye is the only person who is now able to pilot a gear after all the others stopped working because they required the Zohar to function. Xenogears is different because it is powered by Faye's soul. We also learned around this time that the gears represented the anima, or the soul of the pilot. Faye's decision to pilot Xenogears represented his spiritual independence from religion because it didn't need the Zohar to operate. Shortly after the battle with Ouroboros, we find Krillian, who has found himself in a state of deep repent after the atrocities he committed in order to revive Deus, stating he had already lost his humanity and also his genitalia as a result. However, it is too late for him to go back. At this point, he grows 2 angel wings, which shows he did not need humans to complete himself, but rather only his connection to God. On the other hand, Xenogears sprouts wings of its own with Faye and Ellie inside, showing how they found their final form of completeness with one another. While Xenogears explores many other themes aside from religion, it is certainly the prevailing theme throughout much of its narrative. This showed Faye and Ellie did not need religion to develop a very strong bond with each other, and thus their true soul. Even Nissan, who interpreted the Zohar as human togetherness, still refused to disconnect itself from the body. It was only with the Zohar's complete destruction that they were able to seek true enlightenment, mankind's connection and existence.